Howdy folks, Bluesboyjag here, yet another walking cigar box guitar lesson. This time at the Arkansas River, walking down at the Big Dam Bridge, which is actually the real name of the bridge, D-A-M Bridge, because it's a dam. So, it's a beautiful day. There's some soccer fields and the river over on this side, which you can't see all that well. Sort of, kind of. This is a great place to walk. Haven't walked here in a little while. So I thought I'd talk to you today about the difference between 3-string and 4-string cigar box guitars. Should you start on a 3-string because it's easier? Or should you start on a 4-string because it's more versatile? Well, it really doesn't matter. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. We'll see you next time. No, just kidding. So, seriously, a 4-string cigar box guitar has the same strings as a 3 plus 1. So, if you started on a 3-string and you learned a bunch of chords and scales and so forth, you can quickly, immediately apply that to a 4-string. The only difference is that 4th string, you may not know what notes go in the scale. So, that's easily rectified. You can figure that out in about 5 minutes. Look it up on the internet and maybe put little sticky notes on your neck for the different notes and the different scales, and blammo. Practice that for a couple hours and you're done. You've learned the full scales on a 4-string. So does that mean that a 3-string is not easier than a 4? I've talked about some of this in some other lessons. And does that also mean that a 4 is more difficult? Not necessarily. A 4-string allows you to play minor chords easier, and it gives you a more full sound because there's more strings. So, bottom line, Jag, should I start on a 4-string or a 3-string? My opinion is if you start with a 4 and you're having a lot of trouble, then go to a 3 and learn a 3 and then move over to a 4. Most people, though, pick up the 4-string about as fast as a 3-string. I've taught a ton of people. Just because there's more strings doesn't necessarily mean it's more difficult. It means you have more options. You don't have to take advantage of those options if you don't want to. You can play the same chords that are on a 3 on a 4 and just ignore that 1st string for a while if you want and learn that way. So really, it comes down to how much you want to, or how many different songs and different styles, I should say, that you want to play. So if you want to play some, well, I was going to say fancy songs, the 4 is the way to go. But you can get pretty fancy on a 3. A lot of people have asked me these questions. They call me and they want to buy one of my cigar box guitars, and they've picked out the one on the website. But they have some questions. And invariably, this comes up. Which is the one I should start with, 4 or 3? In my opinion, start with a 4. If you pick it up relatively quick and you're playing songs quick enough to satisfy yourself, then go for it. If it's more difficult than you thought it would be, and maybe you feel like there's too many notes and too many strings, go to a 3, then move up to a 4 later. Having played guitar for years, regular guitar and cigar box guitar, it's kind of like if you, I don't know, what's a good analogy? If you learned how to play a board game that was a simple board game first, and then you moved on to more difficult board games. I don't know if that's a good example or not. Or maybe if you learned how to play a really easy sport, like, I don't know, soccer versus football or something like that, or maybe golf versus baseball. I don't know, maybe these are pretty much silly comparisons, but there's nothing wrong with trying a 4, getting frustrated, and going back to a 3. The sheer fact that there's a choice tends to give human beings hesitancy, and they want to know definitively, and I was the same way. They want to know definitively, which one should I start with? I don't know. Pick one. Flip a coin. If the one that you chose is harder than you thought it would be, or more frustrating than you would prefer, go to the other one. However, it kind of comes down to how much time you put into it. Because at first, everything, I would think, that someone tries that's new, everything new that someone tries, is how I should phrase that, can be pretty difficult at the beginning. Think about when you were in school and you learned, I don't know, addition and subtraction. That's relatively straightforward. And then you move up to multiplication and division. That's a little bit harder, right? So that doesn't really apply to 3-string or 4-string cigar box guitars. Neither one of them is easier or more difficult. And you're like, that's not what I want to hear, Jag. I want to hear a definitive, which one should I start with? Answer. There is no answer to that. Thanks for watching. See you later. No, just kidding. But seriously, you can drive a beat up car that has no cushions in the seat. The engine's in good shape, right? The tires are in good shape. The paint is completely rusted off. There's no bumpers, right? You can drive that car across country just fine, right? So if you look at a cigar box guitar and you compare the two, the 4 is definitely more versatile. Does that make the 4 harder? Not at all. Not at all. And a lot of people are like, how can that be, Jag? There's more strings. Therefore, it's got to be harder. No. For instance, if you bar across the 2nd fret on a 3-string, that's an A chord. If you're tuned to open G. Well, bar across the 2nd fret on a 4-string, that's also an A chord. Blammo. Not every chord's the same, of course, but a whole bunch of them are. The other thing is, there's some bicyclists. The other thing is, if you learn a song or two, or a couple of riffs on a 4-string, and then you pick up a 3 and you kind of compare the difference and you play around with it, then you'll see that a lot of those chords, 90% of them are the same fingerings. So it's really not a matter of more strings are harder. It's never been that way. If you play 3-string chords on a 4-string, most of them will work just fine with one finger, just like they do on a 3-string, right? So get used to either one of them. Start with a 4 and then move to a 3, or start with a 3 and move to a 4. The sheer fact that there are 2 different options, human beings being as they are, the people ask the question, and I would too when I started. And luckily I had been playing guitar for a long time. But the question pops up, which one should I start with? It doesn't matter. Should I start with a small car or a big car? Doesn't matter. Should I start with a fast car or a slow car? Doesn't matter. Should I start with a car that has 6 seats or 4 seats or 1 seat? It doesn't matter. You get the idea. Doesn't matter. 90% of whatever you learn on will translate to a different type of car or a different type of guitar. So a lot of guitar players who are 6-string players pick up the CBG and they learn it pretty quick. Why? I thought CBGs were so totally different than a regular tuned 6-string, Jag. It's because the facilitation of their fingers and their strumming and also their ear. They have experience in all those areas. So it really doesn't come down to which one is harder and which one's easier. It comes down to which one is the more versatile, guitar for your needs. For instance, if I'm playing a Rolling Stone song, I'm going to use a 4-string because that's tuned exactly like Keith Richards. It's only 4 strings instead of 5, but other than that, exactly. And I can play those songs and learn those songs in 19 seconds because I played them years ago on a 6-string, and they're super easy to play even if I didn't play them on a 6-string. So really, the answer to this question is it doesn't matter which one you start with. Because what's a good example? Trying to think of a good example. So if you start out playing let's say you play a, flute, and then you go to guitar. Well, that's totally different. You can't really apply any of those fingerings on a flute to guitar. But your ear, right? Your ear is trained on the flute. So if it's trained on the flute, it's also trained on the guitar. So if you know what notes sound good and what notes don't sound good in a scale or in a chord on the flute, although you can't really play chords on flutes, I don't guess. Anyway, if you've got a decent ear playing flute, that decent ear will translate to guitar just fine. It'll translate to a 1-string or a 2-string or a 16-string or a piano or whatever instrument. So it's not really a matter of which one I should start with. If it was me, and I never played guitar before, I would assume that the 4, there's a reason there's more strings on the 4 than 3. And the reason must be that it's more versatile to have 4, otherwise they wouldn't make 4s, right? So I would probably buy a 4 if it was me, even if I didn't know anything about music. That's how I would look at it. I know not everybody would look at it that way, but that's how I would look at it. I would say, well, 3 seems like it's perfectly valid, but obviously 3 is, even not being a musician, most people would know 3 would be more limiting than a 4. So I would probably, if I knew nothing about guitars or cigar box guitars, I would probably buy a 4-string first and go from there. I would figure, well, there's going to be more options for different sounds on a 4 because there's more notes, because there's more strings. I would know that even if I never played a musical instrument. Pretty much everybody can suss that out. So what I would do, if you still can't decide, then I would see if you can go to a blues show. A lot of these blues shows in Clarksdale and these festivals have cigar box guitar booths where people are selling them. Go down, check them out. Go to your local music store. You'd be surprised how many of them have local CBGs for sale. I've been doing that for 20 years at the local shops. Pick one up and play around with it. Watch some videos beforehand so you know what some 1-finger chords might be that you can experiment with, and then pick up the 4-string. Pick up 3-string and then pick up a 4-string. Compare the two. If you really are hesitant and nervous about the 4-string compared to a 3, go ahead and get a 3. No big deal. 6 months or a year from now, you can buy a 4. And by then, you'll know some chords and you'll have facilitated some songs so your fingers can jump around and hit those notes pretty quick. So if you can do that, then jump over to a 4. At that point, you've got the experience and the practice in so that you can play on a 4. Of course, you could also start with a 4. If it's too much for you, go down to a 3. I know this so far 14-minute video may seem like, well, Jag, you didn't really answer my question. Which one should I buy? Well, there is no answer to that question. Don't get too worked up about the fact that 4s have 1 more string than a 3. The advantage of that, obviously, is that you can play a lot of different styles, a lot more different styles of music on the 4, and you can play a lot more chords on the 4 than you can on the 3. You can play a lot more intricate melodies on a 4 than you can on a 3. So there's no doubt that the 4s are more versatile. So the next thing you should do is check out some of my different videos on my channel and compare the different types of songs that you see other people uploading to their channel. And you'll be amazed, though, what you can do with either a 4 or a 3. I started out on a 4 because I already knew the Keith Richards tuning from a 6-string guitar. And the 4 is, generally speaking, a Keith Richards open G tuning. And I already knew that tuning for a long time. And so that was a no-brainer for me. So my case is probably a little bit different than some beginners who may not have ever played an instrument before. So be sure and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of this. Please, if you have any questions, post them down below. And as I think of some other various links that might fit on some of these channels, I'm going to put some links. I haven't been doing that recently, but I'm going to put some links that might be a good fit on some of my lessons that I've posted in the past. But be sure and ask questions, and keep watching. I appreciate your support, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we will see you next time.